Hey guys, my name is Matumio, and ever since the big patch update for Battlefield 4, a lot has changed with the weapon balance. Recoil adjustments, damage has been modified basically across the board on all of the guns, and the result of these small changes is that some guns have seen an increase into their power. And so for today, I wanted to go over some of the weapons that are clearly going to be more popular amongst the Battlefield community, and also go over some of the guns that aren't necessarily going to be the best in the game, but are dramatically better than they were in the past. And so the first one I want to take a look at is the SR2 PDW. This is now arguably the best close encounter gun in the game. We'll get into another one here in a second, but this one is phenomenal. And when you look at the stats and you look at the patch notes, that would not have been your initial reaction. Its damage has been reduced from 26 down to 25. Its hipfire accuracy isn't as good as it was in the past. Its aim down sight accuracy has also been hit by the nerf bat. But the real kicker on it, and the reason why I'm toting this as being one of the best in the game, is the fact that it still does 25 damage per shot up close, requiring only 4 bullets in those circumstances to drop your enemy. If you look at every other gun in the game, assault rifles, carbines, even the PDWs, DICE has reduced the damage from 25 up close down to 24, and so it requires 5 rounds to drop someone in those circumstances. And so now the SR2 is looking good. It's got a blazing fast rounds per minute. It comes in at 900 RPM, so plenty of bullets are gonna be going down range. Its hipfire accuracy, while it's not as good as it was in the past, is still phenomenal. You're gonna be able to hipfire people down absolutely no problem, but it's simply the fact that it does 25 damage up close is why this gun is amazing. Like, one extra bullet is gonna mean the difference between life and death in Battlefield 4. Like, absolutely. You get up close, you go against someone who is using an assault rifle like the AEK, you're gonna have the advantage. And that's awesome. Like, I actually prefer this type of system for PDWs. Back in Bad Company 2, this was sort of the way that DICE went about balancing out their weapons. If you played as the engineer, you were abysmal at a distance, but if you were up close and you were able to close the gap on your enemy, you were going to destroy them if they were using any other class of weapons. And I love that. And so the fact that this is now more reminiscent of that type of system, you're still gonna suck at a distance. Like, I tried taking people out at like 30 meters away. I was at a clear disadvantage, especially if they were using an assault rifle. But the SR2, if you are able to close the gap, is going to be one of the top tier weapons in the game. Another PDW that is sitting right up there with the SR2, looking pretty, is the MPX. It has seen an increase to its recoil, so there is going to be a little bit more wiggle room on the left and the right, and that is one thing that you're going to have to look out for. But once again, because its damage hasn't been reduced all that much, it's still only going to require 4 rounds to kill someone within 10 meters. And so now you might be thinking, well, why would I want to use the SR2 over the MPX? Fantastic question. The MPX still only has 26 rounds in its magazine, and its RPM is a little bit lower than the SR2. Its RPM only comes in at 850, and while that's still blazing fast, you go toe-to-toe with pretty much every other weapon in the game, you're gonna have the advantage, but having a couple less rounds in your magazine is gonna be a drawback, especially if you need to take out multiple targets back-to-back. The problem with the SR2, though, is that while it has 31 rounds in its magazine, it has a very, very long reload time. If you've gone through all of your rounds, it is going to take you a staggering 3.5 seconds to go through the animation. That feels like an eternity. And so when selecting between these PDWs, just keep those pros and cons in mind. I preferred the SR2 because I like the higher RPM. I liked having a little bit more rounds in my magazine, but I wouldn't really necessarily say that one is inherently better than the other. It's just more personal preference at this point. The last PDWs that I wanted to take a look at, and hopefully you guys are noticing the trend here, like the engineer class has seen a big increase into its weapon power, is the JS2 and the P90. Before the big patch update, admittedly, these guns were fairly lackluster. They required 5 rounds to kill someone up close, so 1 more bullet than basically all of the other guns in the game. And while they did have a blazing fast rounds per minute, both clocked in at 900 and had 51 rounds in their magazine, as soon as you went against someone who was using a competent assault rifle like the AEK or the FAMAS, and if they were on the same skill level as you, you probably were not going to come out of that firefight alive 9 out of 10 times. Like, they just were simply weaker because they required 1 extra round. Hopefully you guys are seeing where this is going, because once again, since every other gun in the game has seen a reduction in their damage, as long as you're able to play aggressively, you're now on par, at least with how many rounds you have to put into your enemy to take them out. And because they have a 900 RPM, 51 rounds in their magazine, these guns are just a blast to use in close encounter combat. I have had a lot of fun with the JS2. Like, admittedly, it has quickly become one of my favorite weapons to use. Not necessarily the best PDW in the game, but it's just fun. Like, it's just a very fun weapon. And so if you haven't tried out the P90 or the JS2, I highly recommend you give them a try. Moving on over into the assault rifles, I cannot recommend enough using the L85A2. Before this update, many of you are already aware that this was one of my favorite rifles in the game, and while it was not immune to the damage nerf, it did get a kick in the nuts in the damage department, but that's true for basically all of the assault rifles. Pretty much every other stat has seen a buff. Its recoil is more manageable, it's not going to bounce around as much, it has a better aim down sight accuracy, its hipfire accuracy is better, and so maybe I'm just biased because this was my favorite assault rifle before the update, but I was floored after seeing these patch notes. I don't know if it's the best rifle in the game, I think only time will tell at this point, but this is a contender to be a very good weapon, and I have a feeling that a lot of people are going to gravitate towards this in the next couple of weeks. Another assault rifle that might be worth your while is the new and improved AR-160. Before the patch, the biggest gripe that a lot of people had with this weapon is that it had just a stupid amount of vertical recoil for how slow of an RPM it has. It still has an RPM of only 700, but they've slashed the vertical recoil in half and also increased its aim down sight accuracy. And so a lot of people are comparing this to the SAR-21 and saying that it's superior in basically every category. Like, the best thing about the SAR-21 is that it's amazingly accurate, and it's still amazingly accurate, but it has a very slow RPM, and so as soon as you get into a close encounter conflict, you're probably not going to come out of that firefight alive. And while the AR-160 still struggles up close, having 100 more RPM is quite nice. And so I'm finding out that this is a great medium to long range weapon. It is highly accurate, the recoil is almost non-existent, and I have a feeling that a lot of people are going to start gravitating over to the AR-160 as their preferred long range weapon of choice. The last weapon that I wanted to share with you guys today is the A91 carbine. I'm not going to say that this is the best carbine in the game, because it's not, but it is a lot better than it was in the past. The reason why no one really used this before is the fact that it had just a stupid amount of horizontal recoil. It bounced everywhere, and trying to line up your shot was nearly impossible. And so DICE, to their credit, they've made it so that its horizontal recoil has been slashed in half almost. It's still a little unruly. I mean, it's a high RPM carbine, so it's not going to be pinpoint-like accuracy by any means, but it is a massive difference from what it was in the past. They've also increased the bullet velocity of the suppressor on this gun as well, and I would actually say this is true for a lot of the weapons in Battlefield 4. I'm someone who loves the stealthy playstyle. I love going around and just ghosting and killing people without anyone knowing I was there. And while I wouldn't necessarily say that the suppressor in the past was worthless, I felt like it was decent. Since the most recent update, because the bullet velocity has been increased, quality of life while using this attachment has increased significantly. And so if you like the stealthy playstyle, you like that type of role, I recommend you give it a try, and I think you are going to enjoy the changes that they have made. But yeah, guys, those are the guns that I would recommend ever since this big patch update. I am loving them, and I can guarantee if you try them out, you're also going to notice a huge difference from what they were in the past. But let me know what you guys think. Have you been sticking with your trusty same old guns like the M416, or have you been experimenting a little bit more? Let me know down below. But yeah, until tomorrow, have a good one, and take it easy.